Okay, what's up everybody? This is Alex Graff here, bluegrass musician and teacher coming at you from Southwest Colorado. I'm outside today enjoying the weather, hopefully not going to get bit up by the cedar gnats too bad. I want to talk to you today about being a musician, being an improviser, and maintaining your sanity in a digital age of music. Things I've learned over the years that have really helped me preserve my sanity and ultimately helped me continue and not quit music. At about maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I was in the jazz world and at a point of music and the competition where I was pretty close to just putting down music and quitting entirely, just kind of out of necessity, because I just got so worked up and so caught up in the competition and the mental struggles that occur when you're that deep in that world, especially as an improviser. So this is for musicians in general. I have my acoustic guitar here. I'm a bluegrass and jazz musician, so it's really especially for folks who are improvisers and who are constantly in that self-reflexive cycle. Hopefully these tips, I have about 12 or 13 of them, are going to help you out. They've certainly helped me out. They're not for everybody, they're just things I've learned. So okay, number one. These aren't ranked in order of importance, but they're just numbers, I guess. So number one is, I actually have learned over the years to limit the amount of music I listen to. And I know this is a little bit of a paradox, because part of being a musician in a specific genre like bluegrass or jazz is you really have to just immerse your ear in the sound, in the tunes, in the repertoire. So it's kind of a little bit of a catch-22, this piece of advice, but it's about gating the amount of music you expose yourself to, or being really selective about what you're allowing yourself to listen to, right? To me, there's this fine line between being inspired and feeling just dejected, right? Listening to something or a piece of music by one of your peers. Maybe you respect this peer really well, hold them in high regard, but for some reason it just hit you at the wrong time, and now you want to quit. You want to put down your guitar, you never want to play your instrument again. So starting to develop an understanding within yourself of, is this listening, active listening, or just like fun listening, gonna be useful to me? I know some musicians who play so much that when they're in the car, they don't listen to any music. They just have silence. And that's for their mental health, really. Super important to know, to start to understand what is inspiring, what is not inspiring, what is gonna detract from your experience. I'm really narrowly focused in bluegrass. And so 90% of what I listen to is bluegrass. It's kind of like this research that I'm constantly doing, trying to always listen for new things. And if I started to listen to all this cool music that's being put out every single day, it's a luxury we live in. We have access to all this incredible music on our phones and our hands. But if I listened to all of that, it would probably be counterproductive. So support your fellow musicians. That's one of these bullet points, but also know when to cut yourself off. When is enough? What is enough? What's the threshold of you're crossing into not being inspired anymore? Okay, number two, never listen to other people's opinions. This one is probably gonna get some pushback. I don't fully mean that. I don't mean just never listen to anybody. Again, discernment, right? Know when you're being mentored by somebody, when you're in the presence of someone whose opinion you should listen to, and then know when you're in the presence of someone whose opinion doesn't really matter. Anybody who is just kind of a listener, an acquaintance, who has a thought or opinion that they want to share with you about your music, especially if it's unsolicited by you, I would not listen to that. Try as hard as you possibly can to ignore what they're gonna say. It's really hard to do that, I understand, but everyone has an opinion. You know what opinions are like, right? Everyone has one, and they're so useless for the most part, not really helpful. I could see maybe there could be some constructive criticism that maybe you might want to listen to, but also you might not even want to listen to that constructive criticism at times, right? If you're so focused that constructive criticism is going to kind of be jarring or detract you from your path, then that is not really that constructive. So know when you're ready for constructive criticism. Oh, it's getting a little windy here. Sorry about that. It's that time of year. Again, does that mean don't listen to anything that people have to say? No, of course there are mentors. There are people who have your best interest at heart, right? And those are the people that you want to listen to their opinions. My album that I put out last year, I guess, it got reviewed. It got some really nice reviews, got some positive reviews. Honestly, I don't even really like to read the positive reviews. I have somebody else read it for me, my fiance or a friend, and they say, yeah, or my mom or my dad, and they're like, yeah, it was a good review, and that's all I really need to know. I don't need to know the minutia of why this person thought this about this one song, right? That's just their opinion. That's the thing about art, is once you release it out into the world, it's no longer yours. And so that can have a negative effect on you, the creator of the art, and unfortunately that can lead you to not want to do your art anymore. So don't let that happen. Here comes another gust of wind. Okay, number 3. Yeah, nice and windy out here in Southwest Colorado. It's whipping everywhere here today. Number 3, hopefully you can hear me. Do not engage with people on the internet, okay? That's my piece of advice to you. As somebody who's all over the internet, I'll be on the internet in this video. I have a big Instagram presence and YouTube presence and working at it. It's just not worth engaging with folks. Really the folks with the negative opinions, just like we were talking about. Of course, it's important to reach out to people who really love your stuff and engage with those folks, but the people, the haters, the trolls, it's just not worth talking to them or giving them the time of day. It's a waste of your time and energy. Number 4 is if you have to engage with those folks, try to have some stock phrases or some stock responses. This is what I have done in the past, right? I got to a point where I was posting enough on social media that, at a certain threshold, you just get random people. Who knows what time of day you're hitting them with your piece of social media, right? That's the crazy thing about social media, is we don't control when other people see it for the most part. Sure, we can post it at a certain time of day, but suddenly you're in somebody else's hand, right? And what that means is that you don't know what someone else is going through, right? They could have opened up their phone, maybe, they had something awful happen in their lives and they just opened up their phone, right? We all go onto our phones to kind of numb our minds at a certain point. Maybe they're going just to get away, to dissociate in a way. And what they see is you just shredding on guitar, or they see you doing something cool. Maybe there's a little bit of jealousy involved, or maybe they just don't like the way you look, right? Something like that. And you have no control of when other people are seeing you. So anything could happen. It doesn't mean that what you're doing is bad. It has no relevance on, or no meaning really, on what you should do, what you shouldn't do, what you should post. So again, don't engage, but then if you have to engage, some stock phrases are really nice. I found that the best stock phrase that I used with the most success, meaning the least amount of stress, was bless your heart. The words bless your heart. It's just a phrase that, like, how do you fire a shot back from that, right? If someone says, like, posts or writes a comment like, oh, this sucks, or something like that, bless your heart. It levels you, it positions you above them, right? A little bit of patronizing tone, but not enough content for somebody really to dig into and fire something specific back, unless they're just full of insults, at which point, again, my first recommendation, just don't even engage, would be useful. A little side story, I did use that stock phrase, bless your heart, on somebody. He had commented on a video, as people do, and which, is their prerogative, and I encourage people to comment, but he had commented on something and I was playing something on the guitar really fast, bluegrass, and the metronome was on the 2s and 4s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Da, 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 da. And I'm pretty sure what was going on is that he had never heard that before. He had never heard someone practice like that. And so, but I was pushing really hard. It was really fast. I was a little bit behind the beat. Of course I was. It was super fast. It was like 180 BPM, 260 for you jazz musicians out there. And he was like, this is nowhere near in time. Like, this is awful, blah, 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 like just ripping into me. And part of me was like, do I go through the trouble of being like, hey, I'm using the metronome on the 2s and 4s, like, just like kind of justifying myself? And I was like, no. I just said, bless your heart, and it disarmed him. However, what ended up happening, which was really kind, is other people were like, what are you talking about? Yeah, he's a little bit behind the beat, but he's pushing it. Like, they're coming to my defense, and it was really kind. And this guy just kept on railing. He just kept on lashing out at all these different people. And the messed up thing is that the way the algorithm works is that it really does well when there's hatred, when there's people spewing vitriol, when there's negativity. The algorithm really pushes that stuff because it gets engagement. And so, unfortunately, even though I used that bless your heart thing, this guy just kept on going, and it turned out to be like one of my best videos, which maybe it would have either way, but it's an unfortunate reality of social media is that the loudest, the most negativity, unfortunately gets the most views sometimes, and that's just a reality. And that's something to think about with all this mental health stuff as a musician posting your music online. Okay, let's go to number 5. This one has to do with critique and self-critique. What I have written down here is practice being able to critique without being critical. And this goes for others as well as yourself, right? Being able to listen to somebody else and not have a self-reference, compare it back to yourself is what I'm trying to say here, right? Where you can maybe not love it, but you're not critical. You're critiquing, right? You have, and with other people, I don't recommend, just like I said before, don't listen to other people's opinions. Well, that goes for you too. Don't give an unsolicited opinion, right? So set yourself up with others to just notice, right? Don't judge, right? Just notice. Well, why am I not digging this tune? Okay, is it because this person's evil? No. You don't have to like everything, and that's just the reality of music. Not everybody has to like everything. And this is why I think sometimes people, they feel the need to put their comments online, because there's this assumption that on social media you have to like everything. You have to like all music. You have to like what everybody else is saying, and it's just not true. It's not the human condition. It's not how we interact. We don't always get along. We don't like each other, and that's just honest. It's just what it is. So practice this with other people so that you can also practice it with yourself, right? When you're an improviser, when you're a musician, when you're committed to improving, I think a big part of that is being able to listen to yourself. Like literally, not like in a woo-woo spiritual way necessarily, although that's good, but like listen to recordings of yourself, watch video, record yourself, right? So this ability to notice, to have critique, but not be critical, right? It's a difference, right? Like there's this there's this idea in the world of when you're having a discussion or a disagreement with somebody, especially in the professional world, hard on ideas, not people, right? So we're engaging with the content, but not because of this person's character, not relating it to who they are as a person necessarily. And that's really good to do with yourself, to get in that practice of giving yourself some grace, realizing, taking stock of the things you can improve on with this critique, but not turning it into this internal, like deep criticalness of yourself. So that's number 5. Number 6, realize that there is enough to go around. Okay, not to get too into that, like, abundance woo-woo stuff, but But there's a lot of truth to that whole world of, we've been trained to think that there isn't enough to go around, that there isn't enough love or praise or ears to go around to hear your music. And the truth is, just like, there is. We've never been at a more primed time for there to be enough to go around. And a lot of that is going around on the internet. Like, we have access to millions and millions, billions, I might even say, of people who love music, who love listening to art. And there certainly is enough to go around. The other side of this is, someone else's success does not take away from yours. I want to say that again. Someone else's success does not take away from yours. This is maybe the biggest thing that I've had to relearn over the last 5 years, since like getting really, really deep into music again. A lot of times when you're improving and you're on this learning journey, there's a sense of urgency, and we're taking stock of every other person's success. And whenever you see someone else's success, there's this very ill-advised, is what I'll say, instinct of, well, why isn't it me? Why didn't I get that, right? Well, why does this person deserve it? And that is not a sustainable or a healthy way to go forward with your music. That is going to lead you to burnout so fast, because if you're always calculating the reasons why someone else had success when you actually deserved it, you're going to be done in a month, because everyone is posting their successes all the time, right? That's what social media turns out to be a lot of times. And so we need to stop. And I had to stop. It's hard to unlearn this. It really is. It takes a little bit of time. But getting into the practice of reminding yourself, that someone else's success does not take away from who you are, from your success. Everyone can be successful. Everyone can have success simultaneously. It doesn't have to be a competition. Music should not be a competition. Sometimes we're competing for gigs, right? There is a reality to that, to some of the competition. But when you decide, right, the moment you decide that you're no longer in competition with other people is the moment that you stop being in competition with other people. Okay, I don't want to belabor this, but I can't tell you how important that has been for me personally, in really blossoming, I feel, into who I want to be as a musician and an improviser, really. Kind of along those same lines, number 7, very similar, related. I just added this right before I sat down. You need to ask, okay? This is related to the success thing, right? And the gig thing, right? I can't tell you how many times I've thought to myself, I'll admit it, right? Why did this person get the gig? Why didn't I get it? This feeling of inadequacy. Well, why not me? And right, there's a lot to that. We try to unpack a little bit of it. But what I want to also say about it is, you have to ask, right? And I mean this like specifically for opportunities and for gigs, right? Not to nudge people out of the way. That's not what I'm suggesting at all. But I'm saying you have to advocate for yourself. You can't sit back and just say, well, I'm not going to ask for a gig, or I'm not going to ask for that opportunity because my self-worth is so high, or my ego's so big. They have to come to me, right? That's the only thing that's going to satisfy, this urge in me, right? So we need to break that. We need to humble ourselves a little bit. I can't tell you how many times I've heard other people say this too. Like, well, why didn't we get invited to this? Why didn't we get invited to that? And in my personal experience, being on the other end of that, is that a lot of times I wouldn't have gotten that gig, or I wouldn't have been invited to that opportunity if I didn't bug the shit out of the booker, the promoter. I don't have any management, but maybe this is what a manager is for. But if you don't have a manager, right, I wouldn't have gotten that unless if I wasn't bugging the shit out of the person, right? I've had that happen in festivals before, where I just assumed, oh, I played the local festival last year, so I'll get on this year. And we slowly are creeping closer and closer to the festival. I'm like, well, nobody reached out. Oh shoot, I guess it's on me. Right? So then I reached out and I was like, hey, just want to make sure we're I'm playing this. oh, yeah, totally. Sorry. You know, everybody has busy lives. It's not necessarily a slight, but for sure, what's going to happen if you don't ask, likelihood of you getting that opportunity, way lower. What's the worst that could happen? They're going to say no, right? Okay, then you just got to deal with your own ego. So you need to advocate for yourself. Not to push people out of the way, not to embody that competitive scarcity kind of, you know, just walking all over your fellow musicians type of thing, right? We want to be respectful and lift everybody up at the same time, but also you have to advocate for yourself. You got to get over it. You got to ask. Okay, let's continue. Number 8, practice reaching out to fellow musicians to tell them how much you appreciate them, even when you perceive them to be in your same narrow niche. This is so important, right? This is important, yeah, because it's going to open up relationships and let other people know that you're friendly. But really, it's just going to continue to change your mindset about how you perceive threats, right? I think our human brain is so oriented towards negativity, perceiving threats, right? It's a survival instinct. And once you start to train yourself to get out of that, I think that this whole world of creativity and connections and opportunities can continue to open up. This is just what I've realized in my own life. When I was treating other people as threats, as competition, well, then that's what they are. It reified itself. Once I started reaching out to people and I dropped my guard and I said, man, or ma'am, I really appreciate, I showed up to your show, that's a big part of it, and I just thought what you were doing was so great. I love this song, blah, yada, yada. Or you reach out to musicians who sit in with you. Hey, I really appreciate you so much. Just showing that appreciation, especially in your local music scene, is gonna do wonders for your relationships, gonna open up opportunities, going to drop other people's guards and help them realize that you're not up on your high horse. You just wanna play music and create art with them, and also just change the way you perceive the playing field of music, which I think this is all just net positive stuff. Okay, let's keep going. Number 9, learn how and when to say no to gigs and random jams, right? This is gonna vary person to person. For someone maybe in the beginning who has a lot of time in their hands, saying yes to everything is, I think that's solid advice, right? Not turning down everything and being known as the person who shows up always, no matter what, that's big. At a certain threshold, and depending on what your life is like, learning how to say no is so important. I'm not going to belabor that too much because it's scenario based. Might not be the perfect advice for every single person, but just something to keep in your mind. I wouldn't ever recommend saying no out of a place of thinking you're better than, right? If that's why you're saying no, that's not the right reason. Really, when I'm saying no to stuff, it's about my time. It's about knowing the limitations of myself, setting up those boundaries with myself, knowing what I need to focus on and what will get cut if I say yes to this opportunity, and how valuable that is to me. So having a really good internal compass of time management, that's kind of what it comes down to. Okay. Number 11, this is kind of a light-hearted one. Make mistakes on purpose and try to laugh at them. And this is specifically for improvisers, right? If we take ourselves too seriously, we're done for. We are done for. You need to make room in your life for making mistakes. That's all I'm going to say there. Let's see. Number 12. Okay, this is, I don't know how controversial this is going to be. It's about substances. It's about really specifically drinking, because I think that's the only substance that is at all really acceptable, slightly socially acceptable on a gig. I mean, 9 times out of 10, I'd say that it's really not acceptable. you got to know your limits. You got to be really aware of your drinking. A lot of musicians have an issue, have problems, and it's really taking away from their potential. And it's a hard thing, because don't get me wrong, I get nerves. We all get nerves. I think the reason why many musicians have a drink at a gig is out of a good place, right? They just want to cut the nerves so that they can perform their best. It's not because they want to get messed up and trashed and necessarily party, right? Maybe if you're at a festival and you're partying, whatever, you're at a jam, whatever. But if you're on a gig, you know, it's a slippery slope. Know your limit. One beer at a gig, sometimes that's okay. Sometimes that's enough to cut off a little bit of an edge. So many times though, it's a slippery slope, and one for many people turns into 3 or 4, gets sloppy, leaves a bad taste in your mouth. You know, honestly, when I see a band, my personal band at this point in my life, if it's a serious gig, there's no alcohol on the stage. It's not a great look. If you want to have a celebratory beverage before, go ahead. Maybe that takes a little bit of the edge off. You're able to breathe, you know. But I think what's important to know is that you don't need it to perform your best. You don't. Let's leave it at that. What do you think? I'm interested to hear what you say. I mean, really, 0 drinks is probably the best amount of drinks for performing live music and being respectful to an audience, and that's just the truth of it. Okay. 13 and 14, or maybe 12 and 13. Meditation, super helpful for musicians. You know, 10 minutes of meditation, highly recommend it. Not much more to say there. Just an organization of the thoughts. There's a lot of mental clutter that develops for musicians, especially improvisers, folks who are self-reflexive like that, and self-critiquing, not critical. Meditation can help you kind of sift through some of that stuff. Here's the last one for today. This is another one that's kind of on this like meditation stuff. It's about gratitude. Again, our brains as humans are so programmed towards the negative, whether it's pain we're having, stress we're having. A lot of times we can bring that into our music, into our live performances. It's hard to separate those worlds. Not saying you need to exclude that and compartmentalize everything, right? Your experience is what you're trying to express sometimes when you're improvising. That can include pain or you know, hard emotions, right? That's part of self-expression. I'm not saying get rid of that, but make some time for gratitude. So what I have written down here is every time you pick up your instrument, and at the very least, every time you play a show, you're about to go on stage, just take a quick second for gratitude. You don't have to say it out loud, but just have this internal moment, right? It's a prayer in a way, right? It's setting your intentions. It's being grateful for this opportunity, right? One thing I like to do is whatever band member, right, in that moment right before we get on, whatever band member I'm closest to, right next to, you know, physically right next to, closest to, I just like to turn to them and I just get as corny as I possibly can, as dumb, as cringy as I can, and I just tell them I just make note of how lucky we are to be about to play music for people. What a privilege it is. Of all the things in the world that could be happening right now, we're about to pick up our instruments and go play for an audience. Whether that's an audience of 1 or an audience of 10,000, other people are about to hear it, and that's such a gift. And like no matter what the gig is, it could be, again, 1 person, 10,000, a shitty bar gig, or, you know, the Opry, right? Whatever it is, cultivating that sense of gratitude, especially before you play, is going to really help how you play your instrument, how you remember the gig, how you experience the gig. I mean, how many times has it been true for you that, you know, your experience of the gig, how you felt, was not aligned with how it sounded when you listened to the recording, right? How many times has that happened to you? It's happened to me a million times where I just didn't feel good, right? Something was off in my mood, and I was like, God, we didn't play right. I listened to the gig. That was pretty good. What the heck? Why was I so negative? Maybe it was my frame of reference going into the gig. I had this sense of, oh, things aren't going to go right, this anguish, this urgency. So maybe if I started off that gig, and I'm trying to do it more and more and more, with a little bit of gratitude of man, whatever happens, happens. This is incredible. We get to do this. Maybe we even get paid to do this. That's just a side benefit, I guess. Yeah, so, you know, every time you touch your instrument, it has the potential to change something in you, to change someone else, but you have to allow it to. So those are some points that have helped me along my journey a lot, especially in the last 5 years. These are things that help me preserve my sanity as a musician. It's a really hard thing to do a lot of times as an improviser, as a singer, as someone who plays for people, and really hard to do with social media, with the internet, you know, when we're constantly barraged with, oh my God, I just got to do this, and I had this opportunity, and I got this record deal, and I got, you know, 1 million streams, blah, 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 all this stuff, right? And then you think about, oh, well, what am I doing that's so important, right? So having these things set in place for yourself, so crucial. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to go deeper on this stuff with me or want to ask me questions, drop it in the comments. What are your techniques? What are some things I missed that you have used, or things that have helped you maintain your sanity as a musician in this social media digital age? Drop those in the comments. Yeah, hope you enjoyed this.